All right, folks, welcome to another AllTerra video. As you see by the title, today we're going over the new Federal cartridge, the 7mm Backcountry. We want to do just a little bit of talking portion here to go over the design concept, some of the things that are unique and different about it, touch on comparison versus 7PRC ballistically and bullet choice wise, and then we're gonna take this 7mm Backcountry out to the range, shoot the factory ammo, which we just got in. This is final production factory ammunition from Federal. Test some of the accuracy. So we kind of want to do a whole big picture overview here on this cartridge. For starters, back some months ago now, right, Drew?
Yeah.
Federal reached out to us and they said, hey, we are coming up with a new high velocity, high pressure hunting cartridge designed for short barreled rifles. Would you guys like to be involved with the testing and evaluation and feedback process? And we said, yes, of course. Drew, you'd probably be best for explaining the difference in this case material and what their studies and reasoning behind it is. And they're calling that, they've got a branded name on the box for it now, Peak Alloy Case Technology.
Yeah, so the concept of this cartridge is they wanted to have a cartridge that shot heavy for caliber bullets in a very short barrel but didn't lose a tremendous amount of velocity. So as a lot of you know, reaching kind of the peak performance or the peak velocity out of these short barrels is kind of a tricky game, trying to find powders that'll do that and not overpressure. And I think a lot of people are running their rifles beyond book maximum powder charge. So Federal basically went to the drawing board and said, okay, we want to be able to use short barrels and get heavy bullet velocity. And in order to do that and do that safely, they had to come up with a new casing design that didn't allow the brass, or traditional brass, to flow backwards and therefore create sticky bolts and overpressured integral lugs and bolt lugs of your rifle. So Federal came up with this new alloy, and some of the specifics are a trade secret or patented, I'm not entirely sure, but this is not your standard rifle brass, so it's a lot harder.
They can handle more pressure before it flows or expands like traditional brass does.
So they're able to use a lot higher powder charge, producing more pressure without the sticky bolt lift, because now that's not being transferred back onto the bolt of the rifle. The chamber is actually taking the pressure versus the brass flowing and the bolt getting all the pressure. So as far as the actual chemical makeup of this new brass, we're calling it, or what did you call it?
Peak Alloy.
The Peak Alloy casing. We don't know what that is, but we've definitely had some time now to do some pretty serious testing with this cartridge.
Yeah, we've shot hundreds of rounds of their different ammo iterations. We have definitely seen, Brandon's shot it more than anybody here, super high velocities give him what it is, right?
Yeah, originally it was a little higher than it is now, at least in the test lots that we got, and they've kind of backed it down just ever so slightly, kind of in that sweet spot. It's still high pressure, but there was some hot stuff that we got at first. And the one thing I was going to say is it does look like nickel plated brass that you might see from other manufacturers, but it's something different.
Okay, so that's all good and cool. So we've got a 7mm high velocity using a pretty small case round, but why? Now, we've seen a shift over the past 2-3 more years of customers keep wanting their barrels shorter and shorter and shorter, especially as suppressors become more popular. If you can get a bunch of performance and accuracy out of your short barrel, and then put your suppressor on it and the whole thing is still the same length of your rifle from 10 years ago or whatever, that's doing really well. Or just the packability of a 20-inch barrel or an 18-inch barrel without a suppressor, and to still get velocities, well, they're claiming on the box here 3,000 feet per second with a 20-inch barrel, 3150 with a 24-inch barrel. Now, we have not shot this production ammo, so in this video we're going to take this rifle out to the range and show what the actual numbers are. But nonetheless, we don't doubt that it's going to be around 3,000, and that's very fast.
Everything that I've shot so far has been above 3,000.
Out of a 20-inch barrel.
Out of a 20-inch barrel. It's
Right.
been over 3,000. So I don't have any doubt that it'll hit 3,000.
What folks need to remember, though, is that velocity, pure velocity, is just one little tiny part of the entire equation. High velocity doesn't do you really any good at long range if one shot's 2990 and the next shot's 3040. You got 50 feet per second difference that you can't count on a certain amount of consistency to know that every time you go and dope yourself for a long range shot, that bullet's going to land where you hope and expect it to. So that's another thing we're going to put through the paces here. This is kind of a fun video for us because we're literally just basically testing the ammunition support of this new cartridge for its overall accuracy and consistency. We know what our rifles are capable of. We use the analogy that we build the equivalent of a race car on a rifle, and the ammo you shoot through it is your fuel. So you can run garbage fuel through your race car, it's not going to run very good. So you want to be shooting quality ammunition no matter what caliber you have, and we want to find out how this stacks up and performs. Brandon, 7PRC is probably the most mainstream comparison to the 7 Backcountry. We've built many 7PRCs, lots of them with 18 and 20-inch barrels. So from your experience, what do you see on average for a 7PRC we build with a 20-incher?
On average, we're probably running for like a 175 ELDX, we're right around 2,800 feet a second, depending on the barrel, a little plus or minus there. But 2,800 feet a second is a pretty solid average for the 7PRC with the 175 ELDX.
And so here we're looking at potential likely 200 feet per second faster. So the folks at home would probably appreciate knowing, what does that mean as far as killing efficiency at distance?
Yeah, so I ran a basic comparison, 5,000 feet, 50 degrees, 50% humidity, your typical Western hunting environmental conditions. And I ran that for both of them, the 7PRC at 2,800 feet a second, the 7 Backcountry at 3,000 feet a second. And so the 7PRC's max effective range given 1,800 feet a second impact velocity is 925 yards. The 7 Backcountry is 1,070 yards. So that gives us a difference, a greater distance of 145 yards for the 7 Backcountry.
945 yards for your minimum killing energy out of a 7. That's so much further than where most people will ever bother trying to shoot.
Yeah.
And if we're just doing this exercise, then it buys you another 145 yards. So
yep. And I mean, me personally, do what you wish, but I shoot thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds a year, and I'm not going to be shooting an animal at 925. I'll probably get a little bit closer. So
it seems, especially the older school mentality, don't you think, Drew?
Yeah.
Get really hung up on velocity. Well, how fast is it going to go? Sir, it's going to go fast enough to kill your animal further than you ever should be shooting at it. But there's definitely a mental aspect to the velocity.
And this kind of goes back to the old days when we didn't have optics that tracked very well. and
ballistic calculators.
Yeah, we didn't have rangefinders readily available to the public. So the concept was, okay, if we can make a gun shoot really fast, the shooter can just hold over a certain amount. You know, zero at an inch and a half high at 100 people have probably seen, and then
hold on their back at 3.
Yeah, exactly. And then the whole concept was, because it was shooting so fast, that's all you needed to do in order to kill your animal at 300-400 yards. But now, those bullets that went that fast back in the day, they're not good long-range bullets because they drop like a rock past 500 yards or past 600 yards. So now to shoot further, we need heavy for caliber, high BC bullets. We have rangefinders now that are capable of going out to thousands of yards. We have scopes that track really well. And so the velocity is not that big of an issue anymore, as long as you have terminal impact velocity. So in other words, bullet has to be going a certain velocity in order for it to open or disintegrate in the vitals of an animal that will kill them. So,
however, maybe for somebody who doesn't do the ballistics and dope stuff, maybe somebody in the Midwest, they never shoot over 300 yards and they just want to use a plain scope, no turret, no time for ballistics. Perhaps the 7 Backcountry could do the same thing and get them that high velocity, less room for error if they're going to hold on his shoulder versus hold on his back versus a little over the back. The faster, flatter flying the bullet, the more likely you are to make that hit without doping an actual shot. So that could be one user group that this appeals to also.
Yeah.
Looks like the 280 AI is the closest to it.
Oh yeah. Let's compare these.
Okay.
So you got one of each, Drew?
I think that's a 280 AI.
Yeah. 280 AI, the 7 Backcountry, and then here's a 7 PRC. Go ahead and just hold them up. I'll put some cut-ins to show them up side by side. But first thing, when they started telling us about this, and they had a big, beautiful mini slide presentation on a remote meeting, but it looked very similar to a 280 AI. It's also using a standard width bolt face, so it's a non-magnum cartridge.
Like a 308 bolt face.
Yep, or 280 AI bolt face.
So basically, its closest cartridge is actually probably the 280 AI. 280 AI's got a little bit sharper shoulder angle. It doesn't have, 280 AI does not have the free bore, or actually it has 0 if you look at the SAMI print. These ones have a properly designed free bore and throat angle that's commonly used on all the new cartridges designed for accuracy.
And again, favoring the longer, heavier, higher BC modern bullet design.
Yeah. So compared to the 7 PRC, the 7 PRC, it's a magnum bolt face. So it's a larger diameter, shorter, fatter cartridge. Actually, overall length, they're almost identical, but the case is actually shorter and fatter, and that allows the 7 PRC to have a lot more free bore. As far as throat geometry and angles, they're almost identical.
So I ran some quick numbers with the 280 AI. Numbers wise, it's not as close with the 7 Backcountry as the 7 PRC is. That's running a 160 AccuBond. I'm not sure if it was a AccuBond long range or not. Anyways, you'd get about 850 yards out of the 280 AI versus 925 out of the 7 PRC and 1070 out of the 7 Backcountry. So about 220 yards less max effective range with the 280 AI.
Really? So as far as velocity goes, the 7 Backcountry definitely blows away the 280 AI.
And the 7PRC also, 200
Yeah.
feet per second faster. And when you look at them side by side, you wouldn't guess that this skinny non-magnum pencil looking cartridge is going to be the fastest of the bunch. And again, velocity, just one portion of the equation. The ammo has to be consistent in the velocity and accurate enough to make those long shots. 7PRC versus 7 Backcountry, 945 yards versus 1100 and something. It only means anything at all if the gun is accurate enough to do it, or if the ammo is accurate enough to do it, or the shooter, conditions being right. Effective hunting distance shouldn't probably be your reason for buying this new cartridge. All right, so we're out here at the range. Brandon's here, Drayton's here. We got the 7 Backcountry and the ammo. This is the 170 grain terminal ascent ammo. So I fired 4 shots through it. And the first shot out of it was fast and it overpressured, heavy bolt lift. And that shot was 3,056 feet per second. The next 2 shots were 2968 and 2957. Gonna let it cool off a little bit and then we'll shoot some groups and we'll just do some more velocity testing. Okay, we're here, 100-yard target. This was the first group after cooling. It's not great. It's about a 1-inch group, 3 shots. This was the next group consecutive to these 3 shots. We're about 3/4 there. So we're just going to keep shooting, keep collecting data and sharing it. Not a lot to deduce about this right now. I'll probably clean that rifle barrel too and then refoul it and then resume. So a couple groups on target, that's where we're at. We've shot this barreled action in the 7 Backcountry quite a bit. This barrel is thoroughly broken in.
Some results. I'm not sure. I think here in the center was your first fouling shots, I think, Todd.
Yep,
is that correct?
That was out of cleaning.
Then we went down here. There's 2 there. I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Then I shot these 3, which is so-so, I guess. It's a lot of vertical and whatever, but shot this and then this and so-so results. I think, honestly, I think if we change bullets, that might help quite a bit. I wouldn't be able to send this rifle out as is with the ammo that we have, especially if it's if this was the only ammo available. But say this is like a solid inch, like it's kind of difficult to do ballistics on something like this. We talked about earlier, this gives you an extra 145 whatever yards of max effective range according to bullet velocity upon impact. But this type group is not going to be effective at that distance.
All right, folks, I'm back out here at the range on a different day. Federal just sent me a few boxes of a different ammo type. So this is the 7 Backcountry 175 grain fusion tipped. Upon opening the latest stuff that came in, one thing I'm not liking the looks of, these bullet jackets are certainly getting scraped up as they are pressed or seated into these cases. It's not a high quality first impression to open up a box of ammo and see this. We're gonna give this stuff a try. I've got 4 shots downrange. Our average velocity is 2935. I did just shoot a pretty nice group. In fact, maybe the best group I've seen out of this cartridge yet. I did just shoot another decent group, but I'm noticing on this 175 fusion tipped box, their muzzle velocity is listed as 2975. Over here on the 170 grain terminal Ascent, this is the one where they're claiming 3,000. They are accounting for a little less velocity with a little bit bigger bullet. That's to be expected. I am 13 shots in, and we have an average of 2939. So about 35 feet per second slower than the box states. Another just interesting observation, the primers on all these rounds are sticking out after shooting every one of them, and they're sticking out a good amount. The fact that these cases are so hard, being that they're not brass, and so that energy has to go somewhere, and it seems to be pushing the primers out a little bit. First thing you'd check if your primers are pushing out on that, out like that, is headspace in the chamber. This rifle headspace is perfectly good. So okay, downrange here to look at this first target. This was the 175 grain fusion tipped. Certainly much better accuracy. Now we've got the flyer over here, and there's a little bit of a flyer there, but for the most part, this is shooting far better for precision than the 170 terminal Ascent did. Now, velocity spreads weren't great, and this, again, same ammo that we shot the other day. Accuracy is about the same. A lot of these two shots together and one flyer way off, kind of stringing here, larger triangular group there. Another same sort of thing here. We're gonna get these back to the shop. We'll have all the data off the chronograph and just summarize this thing up with some more numbers and thoughts. All right, folks, here we are back at the shop. We have gone through, measured all of our groups. We have compiled the velocity data that we took. One thing to note here, this isn't the only 7 Backcountry rifle we've built. We've chambered numerous barrels, both steel and carbon, built multiple rifles. What we see here in this video, in this demo, this rifle, this ammo, corresponds pretty well with the accuracy and velocity we've seen throughout. So we don't feel like we're showing an anomaly rifle or situation here. We don't think our rifle is holding this cartridge back. We just want to be data driven and factual with our findings and our summary here. What are you thinking? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing super high velocity out of a 20-inch barrel, which is great. I am seeing some decent groups with this ammo over here. Which one is this?
That's the 175 fusion tipped. Yeah, accuracy wise, I only shot 5 groups for this exercise, but we averaged 0.612. 0.612 inches, 3-shot groups, 100 yards. Accuracy wise, it's pretty good.
And even on here on their claimed velocity, 2975, we got 2943. I think that's within barrel to barrel variance. Even this one over here is
3,000 with the 170 terminal Ascent published on the box. Our average velocity was 2979. Accuracy with the faster one, the 170 terminal Ascent, our average was 1.06 average group size between everything we shot. So on the box, they are claiming 7mm Backcountry delivers superior long-range accuracy and magnum performance in compact rifles. The struggle with that is the velocity spread is so wide. On this one, the 170 terminal Ascent, we're compounding an average group size of north of a minute with an extreme spread between the 47 shots we took here of 106 feet per second from the lowest to the fastest, with a standard deviation of 23. The fusion tipped, the more accurate at 100-yard one was extreme spread of 45. This is just over these 16 shots here, and in a standard deviation of 39.4. So if we're looking at the high velocity here as a downrange, long range advantage out of your short barrel, accuracy at 100 yards is only one small piece of the puzzle, because the further you shoot, the more inconsistent your velocities are, the more widespread your impacts are going to be, which we can actually simulate. So we took and ran all of our data, our 16 shots worth of data for the 175 fusion tipped in a simulator. This is a 8-inch target. The air. This is an 8-inch target at 800 yards, so a 1-minute target. And as you can see, it's giving us a hit probability of 25%, and the non-hits are spread pretty wide. Every one of these boxes is 8 inches, so we're looking at 8, 16, north of a 16-inch spread at 800 yards, which is what we would consider a long-range hunting shot.
And same thing with this one, we're at 23.4%.
So this is all 47 of our shots and our velocity and accuracy data punched into the same simulator. What's the widest spread on that?
We're like 28
16,
inches or so.
24.
Plus a little.
Yeah, close to 30 inches of group size spread amongst those shots at 800 yards. So it's really difficult to say superior long-range accuracy when we just don't have the consistent velocity to accomplish that. Brandon is he's currently working on a customer's 7PRC, doing his ammo, which is AllTerra premium ammo. And we ran the same exercise. He pulled 38 shots worth of group targets and velocities off of a 20-inch barreled 7PRC with a muzzle velocity of 2820 on average, and tighter extreme spreads, smaller standard deviation. You can see what the spread does here at 800 yards on the same 8-inch target. We have a hit probability of 66%, and even the misses are much, much closer. So if we're shooting long range at an animal side by side, it's pretty clear the difference in what you gain with a more consistent velocity.
Even though it's shooting slower.
At 800 yards, it still has plenty of impact velocity and foot-pounds of energy on impact to kill any animal that you would typically pursue with a 7PRC.
Yes. So one thing I can add here to bring this into perspective a little bit, say this 7PRC, we have a hit probability of 66% at 800 yards. In order to get a hit probability with the ammo and testing we have currently on this 7 Backcountry, you might have to back that max effective range to 500 some yards, sub 600 yards. So this long range claim that's on the box, kind of have to take with a grain of salt. I don't know. What do you think about that?
So my overall take on it is there's a lot of room for improvement. I hope that if people decide to explore this option and get one and try it for themselves, please, before you go and start taking long-range shots at animals, make sure that your rifle, your own personal shooter capabilities are capable of some level of accuracy that is ethical to hunt with.
Yeah, know your limits. Do your homework ahead of time.
Yep. There's always limitations of the rifle, limitations of the shooter, limitations of the ammunition. It's all one complete system, and the less consistent or dependable any one of those factors is, the shorter your effective range is going to be.
Yeah, give us a call if you have any questions about what you see here in this video.
Yeah, that's our unbiased, fact-based, data-driven analysis and test. Again, what we showed here in this video is just a small portion of a longer
6 months of time of testing.
Yeah, 6 months, numerous rifles, lots of rounds of ammo, and this is kind of where we're landing with it, right up close to launch and this becoming available to the public. So I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.